Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. We are presented by Gatorade on this Tuesday. Great to have you with us. I am Dave Revson. We're less than a month removed from the end of the basketball season, and we already have some information heading into next year. We're going to reveal the conference opponents for every team today. We do not have the when of the schedule. That comes later. Today, what we have is the who of the schedule. We'll let you know who each team plays multiple times, then we'll give you the home and away opponents for each team. And here to help us with that is our buddy Bruce Weber. And Bruce, there's a lot to talk about here when you talk about Big Ten basketball heading into the year. We'll narrow the focus here early on the schedules and then go big picture. But what jumps out at you as you look at who everyone's matched up with?
Yeah, we just got it, so it's hard to really analyze it. But I don't think anybody really is like, oh, my goodness, we're in trouble. We got to play the top three teams twice or, that type of thing. So I think it's pretty balanced when I look at it. Obviously, the rosters are still moving. So we're just going to have to see how things evolve over the next couple of weeks, who stays in the NBA draft, who comes back. And then you'll have a little better feel of how that schedule unfolds. And as you know, TV's involved with the schedule making. And as a coach, you sit there and wait till August, September. You're finally going to get your schedule. And then you have a little better feel. But 6 months away, we got basketball. 7 months away, conference play will be starting.
Yeah, I cannot wait. It was such a fun season a year ago. And there are some Big Ten teams that head into this year loaded as we talk about some of the portal movement. But let's get to our big story, and it is the schedules. We'll start with the reigning regular season champs. The two plays are probably the most important part of this for every school, so we'll mention those each time. The Spartans, they always play Michigan twice. They also face Indiana twice this year, the Hoosiers under first-year coach Darren DeVries. Rebuilding Rutgers is the other team that MSU will face twice. They get Illinois at home. They face Purdue on the road. Maryland under new coach Buzz Williams. They see Illinois twice. The Illini building a very interesting roster. That will not be easy, so we'll talk about that one. They get Iowa, also with a new coach in Ben McCollum. Face them 2 times. Get Rutgers twice as well. Michigan and Purdue, key home games. They have to go to Michigan State and UCLA. How about Wisconsin, a team that made it to the second round of the NCAA tourney a season ago? As always, they have the 2 matchups with Minnesota. They also face Purdue twice. That will not be easy. Ohio State is the other 2 play for them. Michigan State, UCLA among the key home games. They travel to Illinois and Michigan, among others. Oregon, seen by many as kind of a borderline top 25 team entering the year. They made a second-round NCAA tourney exit last year. They play UCLA, USC, and Washington twice. And remember, that is going to hold for all 4 of the West Coast teams. They will play all the other 3, both home and away, to cut down on travel. Michigan and Michigan State among the key home games in Eugene. Speaking of Michigan, the Wolverines, fresh off a Sweet 16 appearance in Dusty May's first year, boasting what many consider to be the nation's top portal class. I already mentioned the 2 play with MSU. They play Ohio State twice this coming season as well. Remember, that is not a guaranteed 2 play, but it does happen this year. And then Penn State, the other team that the Wolverines will face on multiple occasions. I mentioned that portal class for Michigan. It includes Yaxel Lendeborg, considered the #1 player in the portal. He is transferring in from UAB. Now, he also put his name in the NBA draft, so there's the possibility that he goes pro. Adai Mara from UCLA, Marez Johnson from Illinois, part of a retooled front line with Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden both moving on. And so, Bruce, let's talk about Michigan. We saw some context with the schedule there, but man, I know this roster is really exciting and with good reason for Wolverines fans. What do you think as Dusty May heads into year 2?
Well, one, last year it was a new roster last year for the most part, and for him totally. So he did a great job of bringing those guys together. The thing he did bring with Golden, he brought his culture with him. And now you lose that. And you're losing 2 NBA guys, if possible, and Wolf and Golden. you did a great job with bringing in Maurice Johnson. Of course, that's Rayfeld's favorite guy, one of his favorite guys. You got to feel good about that. And then, the kid from UAB, I keep hearing he's going to end up staying in the draft, and that'll have a big impact. But if he's able to stay, they've been able to replace point guard, big guys, and then mixed in, kept a couple of the guys with Gale and Burnett. So they got a good mixture of guys, and I'm sure Dusty May and the Wolverines fans got to feel good about it.
Oh, no doubt. Again, the portal class is phenomenal. As you said, there is the Lendeborg issue that's in flux, but some really good players, including Elliot Cadeau, coming over from North Carolina to run the point. So it's a good group that he has put together, and we'll see again whether or not they are able to realize the full value of that portal class. If Lendeborg stays, the sky's the limit. How about Michigan State? In terms of player movement, they get Caleb Glenn and Trey Ford, two highly regarded players, out of the portal. Now, they did lose Xavier Booker, probably not unexpected there. He goes to UCLA. It just never really seemed to click for whatever reason in East Lansing. They also lost Trey Holloman, though, and that may be a little bit more of a surprise. He is headed to NC State. So, Bruce, I know you talk to Tom Izzo frequently. Thoughts on his team as they head into the season?
Well, I did talk to him for quite a while last week, and he was sad, disappointed Trey Holloman leaving. It's part of today's culture, but it's still, as a coach, you work with these guys and you bring them along, and you hope they stay in your program for 4 years, and part of their, that leaves a legacy. And I think that's the one thing I see with kids. They don't understand the importance. Braden Smith staying at Purdue means so much. That guy's, his number's going to go up in the rafters. He's going to be part of the Purdue family forever. And when kids leave, I'm not sure they look far ahead, but that hurt them. But I think it comes down, does Fears really step up? Does, their big guys made some improvement, Jackson Kohler and Cooper, so they're going to, and then you have Carr back. So last year he found a couple guys in the portal. Frankie Fiddler was one of our favorites, and, guys like that maybe aren't from the high-end schools that ended up doing okay. I'm sure Tom will be okay. He's going to coach them. You know that.
Well, they were better than okay this year, and somewhat unexpectedly. I mean, this was a team that was not picked to finish atop the Big Ten, and yet they ended up doing so by 3 games, a team that came one step away from making it to the Final Four, losing to Auburn in the Elite Eight. Let's run through a few more of the schedules. We're going to get to all 18 of them here. How about UCLA? Nice bounce-back year, second round of the NCAA tourney. Again, they face the other 3 West Coast schools as their 2 plays. And then you look at Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, among those going to Westwood this year, while they will visit Michigan, Michigan State, and Wisconsin, among others. Illinois, really interesting team being assembled by Brad Underwood. They always play Northwestern twice in this format. They also get Maryland and Nebraska, both home and away. Some of the more anticipated games in Champaign will include battles with Indiana, Michigan, Oregon, and Wisconsin. For new coach Ben McCollum at Iowa, you get the border battle with Nebraska twice. They do have to play Purdue 2 times, kind of a rough draw there. Also, the 2 we mentioned earlier against Maryland, already talked about that when we were talking about the Terps. They host Illinois, Michigan, and UCLA, among others, on the road against Indiana, Michigan State, and Oregon. First year for Darren DeVries at Indiana, shaping up like this. We know they're going to face Purdue twice. The other 2 plays, MSU, we mentioned that earlier, and Minnesota in its first year under Nico Medved. The Hoosiers host Northwestern, Oregon, and Wisconsin, among others. They head to Illinois, Michigan, and UCLA. Some intriguing games there. As for their in-state rivals, a Purdue team that many believe will be among the best in the country. We've discussed 2 of their 2 plays already, the Hoosiers in Iowa. Wisconsin is the third, so really compelling games there. Mackey figures to be rocking for all those home games, a slate that includes Illinois, Michigan, and Michigan State. Retention was the name of the game for Purdue. They got Braden Smith, as you mentioned, Bruce, coming back. Trey Kaufman-Wren, Fletcher Lawyer, all returning. Did a nice job in the portal as well. couple of somewhat surprising departures, perhaps. Cam Heide, Miles Colvin among those electing to move on. But Bruce, this looks certainly on paper like a top 5 team. Matt Painter is poised to have a really big year.
Yeah, there's no doubt. When you have a point guard like Braden Smith and you have Trey Kaufman-Renn, a big guy that, you're building a team with that point guard, big guy, there's no doubt you feel good about yourself. But you do have to have that mix in there. And, he was able to keep Fletcher Lawyer. I think C.J. Cox made a lot of improvement. Heide was a surprise to me, and I think a little bit to Matt when I talked to him because he had such a good finish this season. But he has Jacobson, the freshman that was redshirted last year, coming back. If he gets stronger, I saw him practice early last year. Good skills for a big guy. It gives him more depth. And then I don't think they have the high-profile guys coming in the portal. But he feels good about it. They needed physicality and rebounding. The big kid from South Dakota State, Kulf, that they brought in, he feels good. He's, had about 12 rebounds a game. I think that he feels was a point of emphasis. And then also they brought in a Murphy kid from North Florida that gives them some athleticism and kind of replace Miles Colvin and Heide. So he's got a good group with older guys, and I said, you get a point guard and you get a big guy back, you got to feel good about your future and next season.
No doubt. A team that narrowly lost to Houston, as we remember, in the Sweet 16 last year. A Houston team that ended up making it all the way to the national championship game. Let's focus here on Illinois. They do have a few key guys coming back. Tomislav Ivisic, Ty Rogers, who redshirted last year, among them. They lose Kasparas Yakichonis and Will Riley. But Brad Underwood has essentially assembled a Balkan all-star team. He brings in Ivisic's brother, so a huge front line. Got 2 very talented Serbs, Peja Stojakovic's son coming in from Cal. And the Balkan flavor has gotten so overwhelming that Underwood actually went so far as to post this picture of himself in front of a stereotypical-looking Eastern Bloc apartment building. It's remarkable, not just to get so many players from one part of the world, but so many talented ones, Bruce. I mean, on paper, this team looks really good.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And you didn't know what KJ was going to be about. He was really, really good. Will Riley and Coach Underwood kept telling us early, these guys are good. And this group, too, I haven't talked to him yet, but I've talked to some people around the program, and they feel good about it. Merkovic is a really good point guard. I feel like they can, that gives them some depth with that. But you still have Boswell. I thought Boswell was the key when he played well and consistent. And then Ty Rogers back. I think people forget about it. I know he's not a great shooter, but he gives them athleticism. He can guard anyone, 1 through 5. So they got a mixture of some skill, a little bit of athleticism, and you got 2 big twins now. Johnson hurts them losing him. But when he would come in, they kind of had to play different. Now, with both twins that can come out on the court and do some things, I think he can keep a nice flow of the game and keep some consistency there.
And I love the fact that he has a few guys that are holdovers. I just think it's challenging when you don't really have anyone who knows the culture. I know Rogers was there last year, but he was redshirting, so he wasn't a player in the normal rotation. To have guys who have played and can be that continuity piece within the program, I think it's really important. And as you mentioned, he's got a few guys who will do just that. Let's run through the rest of the schedules. Ohio State and Jake Diebler, they missed the tourney, as we know, last year. The home and road games, I mentioned Michigan earlier. They get Penn State and Wisconsin as well. Key home games include Illinois, Indiana, Purdue, and UCLA. Key road games include Michigan State and Oregon. Nebraska, the defending crown champs. They play Illinois, Iowa, and Northwestern, home and away. Always a great atmosphere at Pinnacle Bank. They've got Maryland, Michigan State, Oregon, Purdue, Wisconsin among the group coming in, Indiana and Michigan, highlighting the road schedule. Rutgers hoping for a bounce-back year. Their 2 plays are Maryland, Michigan State, and Penn State. Home games, always a great arena there, Jersey Mike's. They've got Indiana, Northwestern, Purdue, some of the high-profile opponents coming in. They'll go to Champaign Ann Arbor, and Madison among the key road games. Washington loaded up nicely in the portal as they head into year 2 under Danny Sprinkle. Again, the West Coast teams are their 2 plays. Some key home games, teams coming to Seattle, Michigan and Michigan State, Wisconsin among them. They will go to Illinois, Indiana, Northwestern, and Purdue among the higher profile road games. USC is not messing around as they head into year 2 under Eric Musselman. They have a top 5 portal class nationally. Again, the other 3 West Coast teams are the 2 plays. Home games against Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Purdue, among others. They'll head to Michigan, Michigan State, OSU, Wisconsin. Year 1 for Minnesota under Nico Medved. They have home and away against Indiana, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. Among the key home games, they got Michigan State, UCLA, and USC coming to the barn. They will travel to Illinois, Michigan, Ohio State, and Purdue. Northwestern hoping for better injury luck. Big Ten leading scorer Nick Martinelli is back. They've got their 2 plays, Illinois and Nebraska, as well as Minnesota. Home games at Welsh Ryan. They've got some good ones, including Oregon coming to town. They will host Purdue as well. They will go to Indiana, Michigan State, UCLA, USC, and Wisconsin, among others. And then finally, Penn State, Mike Rhodes' team looking to replace Ace Baldwin, another team that had tough injury luck a season ago. They got Michigan, Ohio State, and Rutgers as the 2 plays, and you see the home and road games, including Illinois and Michigan State coming to town, and they will head to Indiana, Oregon, and Purdue. So much more to come on the show. We'll talk transfer portal with Bruce. What's working, what's not working, what it all may look like going forward. Plus, how is Jade Mayava settling in at quarterback? That plus other pressing USC football questions with Trojans coach Lincoln Riley coming up. This is Big Ten Today. Our Gatorade game leaders taking a look at the top transfers in the nation heading into this season. This is according to 247 Sports. Big Ten with 3 of the top individual transfers among the top 5 in the country, led by Lendeborg. We talked about him earlier. Drake point guard Bennett Sturts following Ben McCollum to Iowa. Donovan Dent from New Mexico heading to UCLA. In terms of team rankings, Michigan, USC, Iowa, Indiana, Washington, Maryland, UCLA, all with top 15 classes nationally. It has all been a bit overwhelming, as Tom Izzo expressed during the NCAA tourney.
I'm not dealing with it at all. The only thing that I would deal with is I don't run players off. I'm disgusted by the fact that we even have to deal with this at this time. And last year, the NCAA, or whoever's making these rules, had it the first day after Selection Sunday. So while everybody was celebrating that they got picked to go to the NCAA tournament, we have this going on. Something wrong with us if we're doing that. I'm going to worry today about the guys I got in this program that have done an incredible job this year, and that's it. And if that costs me later, so be it. But Tom Izzo isn't cheating the people that he has that have been loyal to him for this chaos that is going on out there.
And Coach Izzo, uniquely positioned to speak his mind, given the respect that he engenders within the sport, Bruce, but a sentiment that I don't think is unlike that some coaches have. Obviously, the flip side of it is kids who know they're leaving want to start this process and want to get down the road of figuring out where the next destination is for them, so it can't all be on the schedule the coaches want it to be on. That being said, Tom Izzo, I think, raised some very salient points. So what are you hearing kind of more broadly from coaches about where we are in terms of the timing of this process?
Well, you really feel like it penalizes you to be in the NCAA tournament, because now how do you deal with the portal? The first thing people don't realize, you don't know who's leaving. You're not going to have your exit interviews with your guys, yearly meetings, until the season is totally over. So how can you even plan? Now, you might know you have a spot or two, and you might have one of your younger staff members or, I don't know if they have a GM or whatever now making a few calls to see what's out there. But there's no doubt coaches would like it to be when the tournament ends. I'm sure, I know with the NCAA, it's tough, to deal with that, the timing, the NBA draft they're dealing with, all those things, and allowing the kids to visit campuses, which, to be honest, a lot of kids aren't even visiting the campus. I still remember John Tonje. I asked the Wisconsin assistants when I had one of their games early in November, and I said, how was the recruiting process? I'm thinking a visit, calls, all this stuff. They said 15 minutes. I said, 15 minutes? Yeah, one call. We told them what our offer was, what were we see them, and the kid called back and said, I'm coming. So it is different now, but it is tough on the coaches. It almost penalizes you if you are in the NCAA tournament.
I will say it was probably the best 15 minutes of Wisconsin's season, certainly of the offseason. That's a very productive 15 minutes to get John Tonje. I hear everything you're saying, and again, you can't help but to empathize with what the coaches are talking about, because I think the point that Tom Izzo made is one you want to reinforce, which is, hey, I'm trying to squeeze every ounce out of this team right now and make a historic run and give these guys a memory that they'll have for a lifetime of advancing in the NCAA tournament and potentially making it to a Final Four, and trying to do that while balancing everything else that's going on with the portal. Obviously, it is really difficult. The challenge, as you said, Bruce, is the timing from the players' point of view, of players wanting to move on. I mean, the bulk of teams don't make it to the NCAA tournament. So those kids are saying, hey, I want to figure out what the next deal is for me. Also, the challenge of preparing for potentially the NBA draft. So all of those are factors as well. But calendar-wise, it does seem like we're in a little bit of a pickle here. And it'll be interesting to see what happens here going forward.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And probably the real sad part about it, Dave, is agents are already talking to people around programs. Hey, my kid's going to be available before the season even ends. And this is not something new. This happened when I was involved. AAU coaches would be calling, hey, my guy's going to leave. You got a spot for him next year. And we're like, hey, I'm focused on the team and what we're doing. And Tom brought up a word, and I talk about it all the time, loyalty. And Coach Katie, my dad, that's what they taught me about what life was about, being loyal to the people that have been good to you, that have helped you, that you're with. And right now, loyalty is not one of the top words in people's thought process. So it makes it tough. And again, I know it's about the student athletes and it's important, but at the same time, it's about having what's best for the program, and in the long run, really what's best for the student athletes.
I will say that there is a hope and a belief among those who are in positions of power as we go through this House settlement. I mean, this is, they hope, the wildest of the Wild West years. And I'm hearing it from the football side and hearing it from the basketball side as well, because going forward, were the House case to settle, as we've talked about, these NIL deals are going to have to go through a clearinghouse and they're going to have to be pegged to market value. That is not the case right now. And so you have a lot of schools that have surplus NIL money that they are promising to kids, in addition to the revenue share world that's expected to come in after the House case settles. And so you kind of have these two different pools that people are able to grab money from. And I think that's part of what is engendering this chaos here, Bruce, is this sense of this is the year where if you're going to cash in, for lack of a better word, this is the time to do it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. The money is probably tripled, Dave, in the last 3 years. And that, and I still have a few players that played for me for K-State, and they call me, their parents call me and ask me for advice. And I'm just in shock, to be honest, the money they're talking about. And one assistant coach I talked to the other day, he said, I called an agent about a kid that played 8 minutes a game and averaged not even 3 points a game. And we offered him $300,000. And the guy said, are you being disrespectful? And that, disrespectful? He played 8 minutes a game. He's not very productive. And hey, do your daughters want $300,000, Dave, right now and go to college? I think they would take it, right? So But that's the Wild West we're involved with. And like you said, I hope, and I think everyone's hoping, even the older coaches, that if they can fight through this next year or two, that things will settle down and we'll have a little more control of it. We got it, I talk to guys that are in the NBA, players in college are making more than they are. Major League Baseball, and these guys have been in it for 8-9 years. So you got to have some kind of salary cap. You got to have a little more control. And, they still are student athletes, I hope. And I hope the degree means something. When I talk to fans around the country and schools I've been to, that's important to them also, that these guys do get degrees somewhere, because they know, the money's one thing, but it is going to go, it doesn't get you through a lifetime, and you have to have something to fall back on.
You talk about college players making more than NBA players. I mean, in many cases, it's by many, many multiples. I mean, it's not a close contest. Again, this is what the market is bearing right now and what the market is dictating, and we'll see whether or not this settlement perhaps changes things a little bit. But you certainly can't fault a young person if that kind of money is out there that really could change your fortune and your family's fortune. You certainly can't fault them for going after it. We're going to hone in on a couple of the more interesting teams in the conference with Bruce coming up next. We'll look ahead to next year, what Coach Weber makes of the off-season moves for the Trojans and Badgers coming up. More hoops. Here is the roster balance sheet for the Badgers this year. They lose some key cogs, including the aforementioned John Tonje, the 15-minute superstar, had the amazing year last year. Max Klesmit, Stephen Crowell also moving on. John Blackwell and Nolan Winter are back. That's assuming Blackwell doesn't stay in the NBA draft. He did enter his name. They also added 4 players out of the portal, 3 of them seen as 4 stars by 247, including Austin Rapp, a big man out of Portland. This is a team that lost to BYU, as we recall, in the second round of the NCAA tourney this past season. What intrigues you the most about the Badgers here, Bruce?
Well, I think one, Blackwell comes back. He was one of the better players, consistent players. Keeping him, Winter's got to continue to make strides and take a step up. So we talked about it earlier, Dave. Keeping somebody in your program, culture, that's important. But then also they have a nice group. And one thing, when I look at guys in the portal, and when coaches ask me, and I'm not doing it daily, but I think it's important. Do you get players from winning programs? You're talking about kids coming out of San Diego State, Virginia, guys that have won. Have they been coached? Have they been held accountable? I think that's so important. And then the person, does it fit? There's a culture at each school. And you got to make sure, John Tonje, we mentioned, he fit in there. No problem at Wisconsin. He just, was just a great addition to them. Obviously, he was a really good player, too. But I think that fit. And so Greg Gard's got to feel good about it. They got returners back that, they have a good culture. They're playing a little different style. And they got some guys that are coming in that have been in good programs that have won. And you hope that'll continue.
I agree with you, and I think style of play is a huge selling point now for Wisconsin. I mean, look at what John Tonje did. Look at the offense that he was able to play in. I do think, again, look, winning is a huge selling point, and they've been winning for a long time. So they've had a lot to sell for quite a while, but adding in how much fun they were to watch, particularly this past year, and started to increase that offensive tempo a couple of years ago, you can see that paying off, and it'll be interesting to see how those players in the portal fit into what, at least on paper, looks like kind of a top 25-ish program this year for Greg Gard. We mentioned earlier, USC has a top 5 portal class. They are essentially turning over the entire roster. Terrence Williams, who was hurt most of last year, is the only holdover. They got some big names here. I mean, Maryland's Rodney Rice, Auburn's Chad Baker-Mazara. Remember, they also have the 5-star freshman Elijah Arenas coming in. He was involved in a very scary car accident last week, but is said to be doing well. No major injuries there. So that wonderful news, obviously, above and beyond basketball, but certainly good news basketball-wise as well for USC. This is a team, Bruce, that in year one, I mean, it was a similar deal. It was essentially an entirely new roster. They had 1 player holding over last year as well. The pieces didn't always totally fit together a year ago, but now you had a chance to have a top 25 recruiting class in addition to the portal class. And this is a team that's really intriguing.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. They got some talent. And again, kids from winning programs. Arenas obviously would be a key. His health, how he, obviously you're hoping for the young man that the injuries from the car accident aren't that extreme. But you get that type of player coming in with some of these other guys. They have a good class. And Coach Musselman, he's done this for a while, and he's turned guys over. He's even way back. He's used to the G League, having different groups and bringing them together. And at midseason, we all thought, they go to Illinois, they go on the road to Nebraska, they win some games, and you think they're cooking, and then something happened there. A week ago, Desmond Claude looked like he was going to stay. I can see why Yates left, and he had a great year for them. And I thought, if Claude stays, they're going to be really, really good. You got 3 of the best guards in the country, and he put his name in the last day. But, they have a good group. Coach Musselman, is a unique style of coaching and recruiting, and he's able to bring some talent in. So it's going to be a little tougher, I think, to go play at USC this year.
Desmond Claude's injury, I think, was a key turning point for them. That was kind of when things went a little bit south last year. But you're right. It's interesting, too, to talk to various coaches. I mean, I think there are some guys who really focus on continuity within the program. Tom Izzo is front and center in that. Matt Painter as well, guys who kind of have their way of doing things. And part of that is premised on guys who sign there coming out of high school and build their careers. What's interesting is that there are a number of coaches now, and Brad Underwood is very comfortable, I think, building year to year. Eric Musselman is really comfortable with it as well. Just kind of turning over your roster. And as you say, Bruce, that's a different challenge, no doubt.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And you talked about it. If you have a player to come back and keep that culture in the locker room, what to expect and what the coaches wanted, I think it always helps. I want that. I know when we had good teams, it was because we had guys keep coming back and not trying to rebuild. But, this is something I always talk about, learning lessons, and you want to stay in the business. You got to be flexible, and you got to adjust to the time. And this is the times you're dealing with. And Coach Musselman, Coach Underwood, they've been able to be flexible and adjust with the times and continually deal with those changing rosters and still have good products out there as a team.
Oh, fascinated to see that USC team again. If it all comes together, that could be a really, really good team a season from now. We got more to come with Bruce. We will look ahead to the players that he thinks can make the biggest jump from last year to this year in the Big Ten, who you should be keeping an eye on, or at least thinking about, as we head into the Hoops postseason. A little more time with Bruce Weber here as we look at the top scorers returning to the Big Ten for next year. It's a group that includes 2 20-point scorers from a season ago, Nick Martinelli, Trey Kaufman-Renn. You see the rest of the group, Bruce Thornton, Braden Smith. A couple guys who switched schools but stayed in the conference, Wesley Yates, Rodney Rice, also on that list. So, Bruce, those are some obvious guys that we will be focused on next year, but who are some others that are maybe somewhat less obvious that you'll have your eye on?
Well, we could talk about so many guys, to be honest. And, Iowa, Coach McCollum brings in a group that's been with them. Bennett Sturks he's not his son, but he's been with them so long he could call him his son. And he's a really, really good player. There's no doubt about that. Indiana, he brings his coach's son. This is legitimate, his son, Tucker DeVries, has been a really, really solid player. You got to feel good about him. And again, we talked about culture, stability. There's no more. You have the right person in the locker room, and it's your coach's son. You can. I think Illinois, Ty Rodgers, would be somebody that you would want to see how he improves. He sat out last year, and Boswell coming back. Maurice Johnson Maurice Johnson switching schools to Michigan. You could go on and on. With guys that you feel like could be good. Purdue, the big kid we talked about, Daniel Jacobson. Is he going to make huge strides? I think that's really important for Purdue. If they're going to make improvement, take that next step, it really, really helps.
Yeah, you mentioned Jacobson, and we think about I don't want to say what went wrong for Purdue this year because they were a really good team and a lot of people would kill to have the kind of season they had. But that being said, they had this liability in the interior on defense. And in talking to Matt Painter during the course of the year, he had said, hey, Daniel Jacobson was the guy who was supposed to be our rim protector. So in addition to some of those portal guys that we talked about and obviously bringing back the players they did, this kind of functions de facto as a portal addition here, Bruce, in an area where they really need it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Guys like him. I mentioned Ty Rodgers. You keep guys in your program. The portal's two ways. Get new guys, the fans get excited. But it's almost more important. It's a relief when Braden Smith stays, Trey Coffin-Wren stays, Boswell stays. We haven't talked about Oregon. You talk about two of the better players, Jackson Selstad and Nate Biddle. If Nate Biddle comes back, you got those are two really good players, and for Dana Altman to build on. UCLA's got a good group. It could go on and on. I'm excited. We've had good run in the portal for the coaches. We got new coaches in the league. It's going to be exciting.
It will indeed. I never wish the time away, Bruce, but this whetted my appetite a little bit. Talking about all this with you today should be a fabulous year for Big Ten men's basketball next season. All right, thanks a lot, Coach. Really good to talk to you. Dramatic conclusion of our show next. We're talking football. USC's Lincoln Riley, fresh off spring practice. We will go right to the source, get his take on where things stand on both sides of the ball with the Trojans. Stick around. Finish the show talking football. Here's the schedule ahead for USC, coming off a 7-6 campaign a year ago, culminating in a bowl win against Texas A&M. Get Missouri State, Georgia Southern at home before heading on the road to Purdue for the conference opener. Michigan and Iowa among the marquee home opponents. Head to Illinois and Oregon, among others, plus the rivalry game mid-season in South Bend against the Fighting Irish. Time for our big interview. It is the head coach of the Trojans, Lincoln Riley. Coach, you just wrapped up spring practice here over the weekend. What are the biggest things that you feel like you learned about your team?
I think we had a really productive spring. We had a lot of new players, some really interesting position battles that are going on, and it was just kind of fun to watch that evolve throughout the spring. I think we continue to make some strides on the lines of scrimmage. I think that's been a real goal of ours here from day one, and I think throughout the years it's gotten better and better. And I think these two groups on the line of scrimmage certainly have a chance to be the best groups that we've had here at USC from a talent perspective, from a depth perspective, and so that's probably the biggest difference I think that you notice with our football team right now. And also, I would say you could certainly feel that it's now year two defensively in this system with Coach Lynn and the defensive staff that we've put together. You could feel kind of the difference. You could feel some guys that were certainly more comfortable in that system, and certainly expect that to continue to grow and see every sign that it will.
Yeah, I want to take a deeper dive into a couple of things you said there. You mentioned both lines of scrimmage, and I had heard some of your media availability during the course of spring practice, and you talked about that quite a bit, that you got more depth and you got more size as well on both the offensive and defensive line. How much of that is just kind of where you were as a program, and how much of that is perhaps a reaction to being in the new conference? Is that a function of that at all?
I think it's probably more to do with where we were as a program, and those are historically like the two toughest position groups to really build up into a strong room when it's not quite that. And there's just not many great ones lying around. You can't just put that together in 1 year or 2 years. I mean, that takes time to build the competitive depth, to build the size, the skill sets, all that you really want. The big people dominate football. They just do. And the lines of scrimmage obviously are where a lot of these games are certainly won, and where these battles really are at. And so those two areas were probably the biggest undertaking from a personnel standpoint in this program a few years ago. Each year it's gotten better and better. Excited about what that means. And I don't think it's as much a reaction to being in the Big Ten now, but certainly I think being in the Big Ten highlights the importance of being as good there, obviously, as you possibly can, and having that depth, because the quality of teams that you're going to face week in and week out in a league like this.
Also want to unpack a little bit of what you were saying about Danton Lynn, and I feel like the narrative at this time last year, we talked about entering the Big Ten and where you needed to get. A huge part of that was defense, that you need to get better on defense. And as you said, you really got significantly better on defense a season ago. What was it about Coach Lynn, and how do you look to build on that now here coming up this year?
Well, I think the combination of Coach Lynn and really the entire defensive staff that we put together, was a real shot in the arm for our program, for our players. I think we gained a lot of confidence early on with the way that we played, against some really good teams and some really tough opponents. Statistically, it was one of the most improved defenses in the country by a pretty wide margin. And I think the exciting thing for all of us here is that as much as there was improvement, like we still, there's still like so much to go, and I think so much more that we're capable of, and really our goals and standards are just way above that. And so, and we feel like we have the right people in the building. I firmly believe we have one of the best defensive staffs in the country. The credentials of these guys, and then on top of that, how well they work together, I think is really something. And I think, our players walk into our meeting rooms each day knowing they're getting it. They're teaching the skill instruction, what we're doing schematically. I mean, they're getting it from some of the best guys in the game. And I think that just creates a confidence and an attitude that wasn't here defensively in the way that it needs to be to play to the level we want to play at. So it's just growing, it's just climbing. You can feel that. And certainly the expectations are to take another big jump defensively.
Oh, it's fun to see that jump you guys took a season ago. Offensively, somewhat counterintuitively, I guess, took a little bit of a step back last year. So let's talk about that side of the ball. And there's always going to be a ton of focus on quarterback. And you end up making a switch late in the year last year. You went to Jade Mayava as the starter, and you guys played pretty well there down the stretch with him as the starting QB. And you made no bones about it here in the spring that Jade Mayava is going to be your starting quarterback this coming year. Where have you seen the biggest jump in him, Lincoln?
Well, he's still, he even though he played in a few big games, and as you said, played very well. I mean, we won 3 of those 4 games, and really he gave us a phenomenal chance to win all of them against some quality opponents. But he's still young, even coming out of last year with regards to like our system, the way that we teach, the way that we do things. And so we had a lot of target areas for growth for him. And he's the kind of kid that's just going to take anything that you give him, and he's just going to put his head down and go to work. He's incredibly humble. He's incredibly, selfless, and he's willing to take criticism. He's willing to take constructive criticism, and know he has a realization knowing that, yes, I did some good things, but there's a whole lot that I got to get better at. And if I do, I can play as good as he played, and certainly a lot of spurts last year. Like it can certainly be even much better. So, I think he's learning. Just each and every day. He puts his head down. He goes to work. He's becoming a stronger leader. Having more of a voice and a presence on our football team. And certainly getting, I think, a good feel for how we want to play as we continue to grow in this offense.
Well, he came in as a transfer, but you guys have done really well here in terms of high school recruiting, and you've made it pretty clear that you want to lean in to high school recruiting. USC obviously is in an area of the country where there's incredible high school talent. And right now, I mean, it's not earth-shattering when you think about it. It's USC and the history of the place and how many great players you've had. But you got the #1 class in the country right now for next season. I know you can't get into specifics of players, but why do you think this recruiting pitch has started to resonate with some of the earlier classes, but really resonated with this incoming group?
Yeah, because it's not a pitch. It's they see what's happening. They see the staff we've put together. They see the facility that we're building across the street right now. It's going to be one of the best in college football. They see a chance to get a degree that'll change their life no matter what happens on the football field. I think that the people that really watched our team play last year, the edge, the toughness that we played with, the improvements that were made, And I just think with that, the overall trajectory, and I think they see the opportunity to do it at a place that is really unlike any other. And so it's been fun to see the class come together. A lot of guys that obviously there's an individual part to these decisions, but there's also, you feel the class like they really want to do it together and they want to do it here. And it's been very special to see it come together.
Well, we are anxious to see that group coming up a year from now in LA. Coach, really appreciate your time. I know it's a busy day. Appreciate you making time for us here on Big Ten Today.
Anytime. Thanks for having me. Fight on.
So that's going to do it for us. We got the women's schedule reveal. Shimmy Miller joins me tomorrow. We will see you then.